Chinese laws and the international law, China has indisputable sovereignty over islands in the South China Sea and their adjacent waters.
The armed forces refuses to comment on the near collision of Chinese and Philippine vessels in the West Philippine Sea.
Dangerous maneuver yun ang tawag namin, no? Without due regard sa safety ng navigation, para lang hindi tayo makapasok sa ayungin. Ginagawa nila yan, yung pangharang na yan, no? Isa sa harassment na ginagawa ng China yan.
The Foreign Affairs Department earlier called on the Chinese government to respect the country's maritime rights in the area.
As we speak, President Bongbong Marcos is in the United States for an official visit. At the heart of this trip is the objective of reaffirming that special relationship between Manila and Washington. President Marcos adds that it's time for the Mutual Defense Treaty to evolve. These developments happening on the back of the just concluded Balikatan 2023 exercises and the recent near collision between Chinese and Philippine Coast Guard vessels off disputed waters. Let's talk about all of these in this episode of the Chiefs. Welcome to the Chiefs. Ako po si Robbie Alampay. Kasama po natin live sa studio Ed Lingao of One News, Ami Pamintuan, Editor-in-Chief po ng Philippine Star. And Lucy Cruz Valdez, ang aming hepe sa News 5 Chiefs.
Hello.
Kompleto.
Happy Monday.
Happy
Monday.
Labor Day.
Hindi masyadong
Welcome
happy
back.
sa airport.
Teka, Labor Day nga pala.
Grabe
Happy
doon.
Labor Day.
Oo nga, ano ba? Pero at least may good news sa Occidental Mindoro ng
Balik na, balik na.
Let there be light. Bumalik.
Pero 20 pesos per
Oo
kilowatt
nga,
hour.
saka ano,
Ang lala.
baka daw malugi yung ano, di ba? Yung provider.
Oo.
So,
Hindi
hindi
nga matagal natin
alam.
sinasabi sa mga agricultural products, walang supply issue. May price man. May price issue.
Saka yung profit issue nga nung supply provider.
Yung supply provider.
Di ba? Baka malugi.
Right.
Di ba? So hindi natin alam. Baka mamaya bigla na lang mag-walk out siya.
Correct. Teka, mabalik tayo sa NAIA.
yan.
Hindi naman UPS yun, no?
Breaker daw, breaker.
Basta lang hindi UPS.
Breaker problem. Pero
Baka napareho din yan dun sa pagkahaba-haba explanation sa atin.
pero
sa
again,
ano,
di ba? Parang bakit ang tagal ha? 1 a.m. nangyari. Tapos, balik na ba ngayon?
I'm not sure eh.
Well, hindi natin malaman. Okay.
Pero hindi naman
Pero kayo
naapektuhan
nakagenset sila.
Hindi naman naapektuhan ng trip ni President Bongbong Marcos to
Oo nga,
Washington.
at least one day before.
One day before it. Oo.
Nahun. At least nakalampas doon, di ba?
Grabe. Oo. Ano ba
But
yun?
speaking of, syempre, yan ang malaking pinag-uusapan natin ngayon kung anong agenda ni President Marcos.
Yes.
And inevitably, we're talking about not just our relationship, but also some expectations between the two countries.
Oo. Natapatan pa ng mga standoff na yan. Di ba? Nangyari pa yun. Di ba? I mean, parang sabay-sabay nangyayari at may connection at meron pa rin Balikatan. At least hindi na Balikatan.
Tapos may Cope Thunder
ano na,
pa.
Cope Thunder.
Cope Thunder.
Oo.
Again, paki-explain, anong pagkakaiba ng Balikatan sa Cope
Mas
Thunder?
focus yung Cope Thunder. Cope Thunder is between the air forces of the
Air
US and the
Force,
Philippines. It's the first time we're reviving it since 1991.
Air Force.
Air Force.
Air
yeah.
Force siya, no?
So a lot of air activity around Clark, Subic, and Crow Valley.
Okay.
Kasi yung nakaraan medyo may focus sa, well, of course, land and
Ground operations.
of course, sea.
Well,
Yan
that
importante,
seems to
no?
be in preparation for a war. And it's, I mean, at least for those who are, syempre, against.
Pero bago umalis si President Marcos, kausap niya hindi naman kausap, kundi guest niya sa Malacanang si Chinese Ambassador. With Yang Min.
Well,
And a reminder na set up the direct communication link between the two countries.
Yes.
Baka walang load. January pa na pag-usapan yun eh. Mayo na eh.
form daw ng committee.
At least, gaya nga nasabi ni, the operative word is guest.
Oo nga.
Hindi pinatawag. Hindi katulad ng mga previous, na,
Sino
di ba?
niya si Yao Ming? Oh.
Sabi nga namin, aba, tamang-tama ang dating ni Yao Ming, ha? Baka maging ambassador to. At large.
Pwede rin.
Pwede.
Marami siyang tagahanga rito.
Anyway, but obviously, pag-uusapan natin po ang trip ni President Marcos to Washington to meet with US President Joe Biden. And of course, yung mga konteksto niyan back here at home. We will be having our guest right after a quick break. The Chiefs will be right back.
Welcome back to the Chiefs. Our guests tonight here in our studio, AFP spokesperson Colonel Medel Aguilar, and via Zoom, retired Vice Admiral Alexander Pama. Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening.
Good
Magandang
evening,
gabi po.
ma'am. Good evening, sirs. Thank you for
Magandang gabi
inviting
po.
me.
Good evening, Lucy, Ami.
Good evening, sir.
And,
Admiral.
Hi, sir.
hello.
Sir, unang
Can
tanong
you
na
hear me?
lang. Sir, unang tanong muna sa aming studio guest kay Colonel Aguilar. Ano po ba ang latest dito sa nangyaring standoff na naman, no? Yung sighting ng over 100 Chinese vessels the West Philippine Sea following the standoff last Friday. What's the latest on this?
As a protocol, ma'am, we leave it to the National Task Force on West Philippine Sea to handle this issue.
Kayo po, Admiral Pama, ano po ba ang inyong punto de vista dyan sa nangyayari ngayon sa West Philippine Sea, yung almost yung near collision, yung kidnap ng barko ng China, yung mga foreign and local journalists, at ngayon po ito nga pong sightings of over 100 vessels of China.
Well, una-una, magandang gabi po sa inyo, no? Sa ating mga tagapakinig at sa inyo dyan, sa Chiefs, si Ed,
Hi, sir.
Ami, yeah, and Lucy, and I didn't catch...
Robbie.
Robbie po.
you guys.
Robbie po.
Hi, Robbie, pasensya na. And of course, Colonel Aguilar, thank you very much for having me with you tonight. And pasensya na po sa mga nakaraan na hindi ko napagbigyan.
Okay lang po, glad to have you now.
Magandang gabi po ulit. Papunta po dun sa tanong kanina ni Luciano, ay napakaparami pong punto de vista dyan. At yung sa akin po naman, siguro I have the benefit or advantage of not being in government and being a retired military person, so I may not be constrained on some of the answers I will give, unlike our...
Very good. Sige po,
yes.
sir. Feel
Pero
free.
hindi po, hindi naman po tayo rito makipagbardagulan, ano po. yung atin
Game.
lang po, yung mga nangyayari ngayon, itong latest na itong kamuntik ng banggaan na naman, mukha namang hindi po kagulat-gulat to. Because that neighbor of ours has been doing this for quite some time already. And evidently it has already become what you would call part of their policies to enforce what they want, which is talagang they want to have complete control of the West Philippine Sea. So it's not surprising that what happened lately between BRP Malapascua and yung kanilang Coast Guard 2501, if I'm not mistaken, talagang deliberate ho yan on their part. So hindi na ho tayo dapat nagugulat dyan. In fact, dapat na para sa atin naman, we should already accept that as the new normal, ika nga. In fact, it's not new. It's already a normal thing that's happening.
No,
in the West
well,
Philippines.
okay. Ito na lang, ganito na lang, sir. No? Ito ba may kinalaman dito sa naganap na Balikatan exercise at yung nagaganap na Cope Thunder pa rin? In other words, is this China's reaction to our ongoing partnership with the U.S. in regard to...
Again, Luciano, directly, siguro kung sinasabing ginawa yun dahil sa Balikatan na to, sa Cope Thunder, mukhang hindi ho siguro because I was saying earlier, matagal na nilang ginagawa to eh.
Yes.
They've been doing that for so long. And incidentally, in fact, itong nangyayari sa Balikatan 2023, medyo nagugulat ako dahil hanggang ngayon, mukhang wala pa silang matinding sagot dyan sa ginawa natin. Dahil parang akong feeling ko, yung ginawa natin sa Balikatan, which I agree, basically, is something that's in your face sa kanila eh.
Yes. Pero Admiral, I just have one question kasi tayo sinasabi natin, and that's what China says. Gaya nga po ng sinabi nyo, matagal na nilang ginagawa to. And the way they always frame it also is that, Coast Guard to Coast Guard naman yan eh. But tayo, alam din natin that it is not, hindi naman bananas to bananas necessarily yung comparison na yun. Dahil yung Coast Guard nila, talagang may military nature, di ba? If you look at the chain of command. Sa atin, civilian talaga. How should we be framing it from our end? Kung nagtatago sila behind that really disingenuous framing, how should we be framing it now to give us more or less a more equal footing here?
Yeah, it's actually a plain and simple as stating we are asserting our sovereignty, sovereign rights in those areas in our exclusive economic zone. Ang Coast Guard to Coast Guard yan, that started during the Scarborough standoff when we pulled back our Navy, and ang hinarap natin is Coast Guard. There's a term that's called the white on white. And ever since that's been happening. ang issue nila noon is we are bullying them because we're using gray ships on white ships, meaning to say military to civilians. And in fact, talagang strategy din naman ng China yun eh. Nagagamitin nila not only the Coast Guard but even their yung tinatawag natin na kanilang maritime militia. It's part of their cabbage strategy, ika nga eh. Now, without bringing into a point of being using offensive instruments like the Navy and the Air Force, it's one way of their asserting yung kanilang claim that that place is theirs. So tayo, we don't need to reframe it eh, because it's already there. We already have that policy also that we are asserting our sovereign rights in those areas. And that is buttressed, supported by the arbitral ruling.
Yes, sir. Sir, balikan lang sinabi nyo kanina na nagugulat kayo na hindi pa nagre-react ang China dun sa ginawa nating balikatan. So sa lagay na to, hindi pa pala nagre-react yung China. What could they do or what would they do from your perspective? What else?
Sa ngayon, Ed, your guess is as good as mine. Ano? Dahil yun nga, nakakagulat. Noon, konting kibot lang natin. Nandyan na yung malakas na yung statements nila. May kung ano-ano naman sinasabi. In fact, may ginagawa na. This time around, hindi na naman siguro biro yung Balikatan 2023 na to. Firing missiles in the direction of Scarborough Shore, which is the boat center of gravity now.
Yeah.
Tapos tatahimik lang sila. Teka muna, mukhang worrisome na, Abangan ang susunod na kabanata.
Matanong ko nga si Colonel Aguilar dito, no? Yun nga ho, marami nagsasabi napaka-provocative nga raw natin doon, no? Tsaka yung pagpapadala ng local and foreign journalists doon at this time na nagbabalikatan. Parang hindi ho ba talagang nanunuya raw tayo? I mean, yun ang interpretation naman, na para bang ang lalakas ng loob nito mga to, palibasan na dito mga Amerikano. Your thoughts on that?
No, ma'am. As far as the armed forces is concerned, when we go on Balikatan, it is about strengthening our capability and making sure that our capabilities are also interoperable with that of the Americans. Yeah. So we don't look at anyone as an enemy because of, the foreign policy of the president is we are friends to all. But of course, this is also in pursuit of another policy, which is that we will not cede even a square inch of our territory to any foreign country.
Pero Colonel, nabanggit na rin ni Admiral yung white to white. Saka hindi pwede yun eh. Hindi pwede yung, kasi iba yung setup, yung defense setup ng China as you know, no? Di ba? Yung kanilang Navy, hindi siya actually white eh. Hindi rin siya masasabing gray eh. Paano yun? I understand na we are reviewing our policy sa ganitong klaseng, I think it's unique in the world, no? Yung ganyang setup. Paano tayo magre-respond kapag ganon? Kasi sila, yung Navy nila pwedeng bumaril eh. They can engage in combat operations. Tayo under international rules, Coast Guard natin hindi pwede. Paano yun? Pero pag nag-deploy tayo ng Navy, pag kayo nag-deploy ng Navy, sasabihin, paano yan? You're responding militarily to that kind of situation. Paano yung ginagawa natin? I understand we're reviewing this setup eh.
First, ma'am, the Philippine Navy is continuously conducting maritime patrols. I think there is also a strategic message by deploying the white ship there or the ones that come from the Coast Guard. We are implementing our laws in our maritime waters, territorial waters. That's the message.
Hindi, kaya nga. So, magdi-deploy tayo ng Navy for patrol.
For patrol to make sure that we are able to cover these territorial waters. But when we deploy the white ship there, it is an act of implementing our law in an area that is within our jurisdiction.
And I hear you there, Colonel. Parang sabi nyo nga po, malinaw naman po. And you're speaking completely from our perspective and our official stance here. No? Na ito, teritoryo namin yan. We're just doing what's within our boundaries. And gaya nga po nung sinabi nyo kanina sa unang tanong, with respect to everything else on the West Philippine Sea, you will have to defer to the task force.
Yes, sir.
But let's take that as a baseline. Officially, what is our footing as far as the task force West Philippine Sea is right now? Anong kinatatayuan nila ngayon? What is their assessment right now, especially given everything that we've discussed?
I think the National Task Force has already spoken as to the issues involving that almost collision there. And as what the FAA spokesperson has said, that we cannot be prevented from exercising our rights in that particular area. And we have the right to do that.
But again, we're defining our position, but has the task force in any way defined or characterized how China is behaving?
I think they already characterized that. And they said that to stop provocative acts that will endanger the lives of people. Now, as far as the AF is concerned, we just take orders. So as of now, I think the issue is being settled diplomatically.
Sir, let me broaden the discussion a little bit. The president, when he arrived at the U.S. kanina, sinabi niya sa mga reporters, he is not going to allow the Philippines to be used as a staging point for any kind of military action by a foreigner. Actually, hindi niya sabing offensive by any kind of military action. In this particular case, mas broad na yung ano niya yung terminologies niya When you look at the EDCA sites and the location of the EDCA sites, of course, a question on many people's minds, including the governors, Governor Mambo in particular, mukhang staging point for military action. Sa punto de vista ba ninyo, klaro yun na hindi gagamitin itong mga ito for any military action by any foreign...
Whether offensive or defensive?
Whether offensive or defensive, by a foreign power?
Yes, we always follow what the president says. When he said that we will never allow these EDCA facilities to be used for offensive action, that's a foreign policy already.
Yes, but is that...
It shouldn't be used,
but just
Yes.
to that point, I mean, is that what the president meant? When he said,
kasi
we saw that also,
sigurado
it will not be used for staging any military
action.
We
whether
cannot
offensive or
question
defensive.
the statement of the president.
Palagi ko, DFI ang sasagot niya. You have to know once.
Hindi lang yun.
You have
Hindi
to
lang
know
yun.
once. Kasi meron tayong mutual defense
Yeah.
treaty.
Yes, no,
It's defense.
And this
No,
is
but here's the
enhanced
thing.
defense cooperation.
If you were U.S. President Biden, why would you be the one to bow to the constitution of another country? You're there, di ba? Sila naman, parang his hands cannot be tied. If he needs to launch an offensive from there, he will do it, right? So I think that's a crucial point in the meeting that they're going to have. No?
Admiral Pama, kami pong walang alam dito nag-uusap. Bakit kayo pa? Ano pa? What
How
are
do
your
you view
thoughts
that
on this?
statement, sir?
Siguro pareho lang tayo walang alam, ano.
Pero, sir, but you have the benefit kasi of being FOIC.
I have to explain.
Ang sa akin naman po, one, I cannot second guess what the president definitely means, ano. But
Yes, sir.
I think siguro parang it's part of some sort of a strategic ambiguity rin on our part.
Strategic
In the
ambiguity.
context, in the context na pag
Maganda yun.
sinabi,
Be ambiguous.
Pero may mutual defense treaty ka.
Let them
Hindi, kaya nga po,
interpret.
hindi,
Yes,
hindi.
exactly.
Go
You
ahead.
have to take a stand. Ano ba talaga? Diba?
But
Kaya nga po
just to say on that, sir.
Hindi, bakit ka pa nag-alliance ko if you're not going to come to the defense of the
Ganito
other?
na, Ami, sorry, ano. When he said he will not allow it to be a staging point for an offensive, I don't know if that's
Well, sir,
correct.
ang sabi niya,
Military action.
in this particular case, ang quote niya is, teka, let me go to it again.
Military action.
Medyo malabo mata ko. Not allow the Philippines to be used as a staging point by any country for any kind of military action.
Di ba?
Yes, it's a statement to the president. Tama ho yan. It's going to be a unilateral military action. Yun ang pagkaintindi ko . But on the basis, because of the mutual defense treaty, na sinasabi sa Mission of the Defense Treaty, anybody who will be attacked will be responsibility nating dalawa. So EDCA, the basis na yan, is part of our contribution. Bakas natin sa NDP nga yan, di ba? Pag nagkabardagulan na in the fogs of war, hindi mo na masasabi ngayon na dito nag-stage .
Okay.
Everything na, di ba?
But we're talking about the context of the West Philippine Sea and baka we might be attacked. But that reality is, ang nakakatakot ngayon is the relationship with Taiwan. I mean, China wants Taiwan back. And that's also the reason why, and I'm sure, while this will not be admitted openly, but the reason why the Americans are even interested in additional EDCA sites, which we now have 9 of them, is because nga of Taiwan.
No, I think we should not take in isolation the West Philippine Sea and the Taiwan situation. It's part of the whole geopolitical and geomilitary strategies of both countries. China needs Taiwan, basically. It's an imperative for them. so that they will have clear access towards Pacific Ocean. And then, so West Philippine Sea is still part of that dynamics that they have. If you look at the 9-dash line, tutuusin kasama yung Taiwan dun eh. Because they need this operational space for them to push their agenda insofar as the military, political objectives that they have. So if we just talk of West Philippine Sea, ihiwalay natin yung Taiwan, maybe masasabi natin na hindi pwedeng ihiwalay yan eh.
Yeah,
Because
it's not
precisely
even
we're talking of the
possible, oo.
strategic areas.
Yes.
Admiral,
If
babalikan ko na lang yung kaninang white to white and gray to gray. Since you're an admiral, ano sa tingin nyo ang pwedeng remedyo dyan? Considering that China nga is in a unique situation eh. Ginagamit niya yung militia niya actually to do what it wants na hindi kayang gawin ng ibang bansa, no? In deploying
Correct.
the Coast Guard and the Navy. Ano kaya ang pwedeng remedyo dyan?
Correct. Sa ngayon kasi, kung tutuusin lang tayo, I mean, if it can be told, ginagawa na rin natin yan noon na yung ating mga kababayan, nagbibigay din ng informasyon noon. But specifically to answer the question, yung white to white na yan, sama yung sabi kanina ni Colonel Aguilar, na we have to use Coast Guard, na which is a military law enforcement tawag dito agency, para may assert natin yung ating karapatan dyan. Ngayon, hindi naman natin sila makakayanan na to nga ika nga kung ilan yung barko nilang Coast Guard, kung gaano kalaki, gano'n din. Hindi natin makakaya yun eh. So we are trying to do what you call yung asymmetric din laban sa kanilang cabbage warfare. And I agree na yung paggamit ng bringing it out in the open, yung pagtutulong ng ating media na i-document at sabihin sa buong mundo kung ano yung nangyayari doon is also one way of acting on what they're doing. Kasi hindi nga natin sila kayang natapatan sa lahat ng bagay. Malalaking barko nila. Ayan, kita sa picture ngayon. Napakaliit ng ating barko, tatapatan nila na napakalaki. So physically, hindi natin kaya. So we also have to have our own tactics and strategies to counter that. At the end of the day, what we are already doing right now, I would agree to what it's being, to bringing it to international and public knowledge kung anong ginagawa nila niya na pambubuli. So at least that puts pressure also on them.
Colonel Aguilar, you stressed na ito nga, yung Balikatan exercises, lahat ng ginagawa natin, this is just trying to prepare ourselves and assessing our capabilities and also making sure that we're interoperable also with our allies and so on. So let's go to that point. After Balikatan and the exercises we've been under, where are we right now, especially given these scenarios that we are all trying to build for the situation in Taiwan? If that becomes a flashpoint, if it spills over to us, how prepared are we? What are we seeing from the Balikatan exercises?
We are aware of what's happening around us. And that's the reason why the Chief of Staff, during the opening of the Balikatan exercise, has emphasized that for this Balikatan exercise, we should be able to develop that capability about maritime security and maritime domain awareness. So, but of course, the focus of this Balikatan exercise, as always, has been to upgrade our capability and make sure that we are interoperable with the United States. Now, a while ago, you were talking about the MDT. The MDT provides that we should be able to develop and maintain the capability individually or collectively. And at the same time, we will come to the aid of each other should one of the forces is attacked within the Indo-Pacific region. So, the MDT is about defense. It cannot be used for offensive action.
Well, okay. In regard again to the near collision, no? Si Manila Times columnist Bobby Tiglao has said nga that, this is not the first time that journalists have been used by the Coast Guard also to, well, ostensibly to check out Ayungin Shoal, to check out the situation in the disputed islands. But he's saying that this is like the second time, and the first time he was part of it. You're making media cannon fodder for this provocative act, knowing as how China will react to this, knowing that there are journalists there who will document it against China. Your thoughts on that?
I think that's one approach that we can resort to actually. by making the people around the world that about the activities that are being conducted by another country there. So, but for us, again, in the AFP, we just make sure that we develop our capability to guard our
But if we took that kasi to its possible end, no? What if, just what if, that collision actually happened and there were deaths among journalists? Do you see this expanding into a global conflict that could actually trigger a war?
If there is an accident, I think the first thing that we will do is how to rescue those who will be victims of the accident. Now, there is also a mechanism that is established between China and our country to make sure that communication will continue so that we can prevent the worst thing from happening.
You don't think this will trigger a war?
I don't think so.
Sir, balik ko lang yung the Balikatan and the objective of modernizing the Philippine military. Now, for the first time, we've had a chance, our troops have had a chance to fire off the Javelin missile. Impressive piece of technology. As well, the Stinger ata, we were also allowed to use them. I'm not sure lang about the others. Peter Tata, hindi natin pinaputok, masyado mahal yun. But we're looking at significant technology with significant price points. Are we looking at acquiring these new technology like Javelin and Stingers? Or, kasi I understand we're still with RPG-7s eh. It's workable, but it's not
Tatawa si Colonel
desirable.
Aguilar. Is this
It's
an admission
1960s,
na
technology.
napaka-obsolete ng technology?
What are we looking at in terms of the medium and long term?
There is another venue for the acquisition of modern capabilities, and Balikatan just only show us what they have and
Patikim.
and probably when we go back to our planning on the procurement based on our modernization program, we will be able to assess our capability gaps, and from there we will proceed with whatever is necessary for us to procure to make sure that we are able to perform our constitutional mandate.
But yung RPG-7s, these were relatively recently acquired eh. Mga 20, panahon ni Duterte, di ba?
I only
So medyo bago-bago pa siya kahit paano.
recall RPG-7 when we way back in the 2000 probably during
sige.
the all-out.
Iba pa yun, sir.
Colonel,
Homemade RPG yun.
Colonel, lagi ko naririnig, no? We are striving for credible defense capability.
Yes, ma'am.
How close are we to achieving that?
How close are we? We are already within the Horizon 2, and we expect to acquire more capabilities that will make us a credible partner in defense of the region, especially in the ASEAN region. And I cannot say for sure how far or what's the percentage of what we have already accomplished, but safe to say that we are moving forward.
Kasi tingin ng mga tao, alam nyo, tinutukan lang tayo ng laser pointer ng China, hindi na tayo nakagalaw doon sa gitna ng, I'm not denigrating
sa akin,
Probably, ma'am, because
diba? Sa ganon, kaya inisip ng mga tao, medyo malayo-layo pa yata yung debates.
Sige na ba, ganito na lang po. What are some objective indicators?
Ayun no, ayun yung laser.
Tumataas ang capability natin. In which
pointer.
areas would you say na ito malinaw, gumalaw yan, malinaw, nag-improve dyan, and so on?
First, in the acquisition of equipment, because many years in the past, we've been focused in internal security operations.
Yes.
So somehow the modernization of the armed forces has been limited because of that focus. But now that the president has declared, and long before that, because we have the modernization program, we are getting the equipment that we need so that we will be able to upgrade our capabilities. That's the indication. We have during the last exercise, one of the objective is to make sure that the newly acquired equipment are put to test so that we will know its capabilities and whether we are effective or accurate in using them.
Like the Maverick missiles that were fired
Like
off against
the
Pangasinan.
the autonomous truck-mounted howitzer system. So we use that during the literal live fire exercise.
Nabanggit nyo na rin lang yung shift to external defense. What does that mean exactly? You will be leaving counter-insurgency, counter-terrorism, ano yung mga preparations now for this shift?
In 1995, we transferred the responsibility of ISO to the PNP. But during that time, they were able to
Hindi pwede, yes.
recover and strengthen the forces. So I think right now, while we are shifting to TDO, we will still continue to look
TDO
at the
is
ISO to make sure that they are not able to recover.
TDO is
Territorial defense
Territorial
operation.
defense.
So when you talk about territorial, it's about external defense, ma'am. So we will not forget ISO based on the guidance of the Chief of Staff to make sure that we completely defeat communist insurgency
Meaning you
and
will,
even
you
the
will
local terrorist
continue,
group.
you will continue to assist.
Yes, ma'am, because that's already part of our mission. We have 4 mission areas. One is ISO, or Internal Security Operations. Next is TDO, or Territorial Defense Operation. We have the security engagement. And then the last is about humanitarian and disaster response operations. So these are the mission areas that we continue to fulfill in the armed forces of the Philippines.
Merong sinabi sa amin na you have achieved strategic, well, last year actually sinabi na yan strategic victory over communist rebels. Tama ba yung assessment na yan?
Yes, ma'am, because from 89 guerrilla fronts way back in 1989, the number of guerrilla fronts is reduced to 22, more or less 22. And only 2 to 3 guerrilla fronts are still active. But I think the one of the guerrilla fronts will be weakened. So that will leave us around 20 weakened and 2 active guerrilla fronts. Most of the active guerrilla fronts are in northern Samar. Now, with that, we can now actually focus our operation in the areas where the active guerrilla fronts are. So at least, probably this is a divine intervention that we are shifting to TDO. Now we can now refocus more of our forces for this particular.
More external than internal, as gaya sabi niyo kanina. We're speaking with AFP spokesperson Colonel Medel Aguilar, and online kasama rin po natin retired Vice Admiral Alexander Pama. We just need to take a short break. We'll continue this. Please stay right there. The Chiefs will be right back.
American troops conducted live fire drills in Zambales today as part of the biggest Balikatan military exercises.
The United States is quick to clarify that the Balikatan exercise is not intended for muscle flexing towards China.
Safety is always a primary consideration.
The resolve and partnership is far stronger than any technical element that we have, and that's the true message of Balikatan. In translation, shoulder to shoulder, that doesn't mean weapon to weapon, it really means family.
Thanks for staying with us here on the Chiefs. Still with us, AFP spokesperson Colonel Medel Aguilar and retired Vice Admiral Alexander Pama. Admiral, kukumustahin lang namin kasi sinabi ni President Marcos, he wants to evolve.
No, he said it is evolving.
The evolving mutual defense treaty with the US. Sa tingin nyo, kung kailangang i-evolve nga siya, ano ang nakikita nyo pwedeng evolution ng treaty natin with the United States?
Ay, tama po yan. One, I agree with what the President is saying, that it has to evolve. In fact, kung akong tatanungin po ninyo, hindi lang evolve baka kailangang i-reboot o reset natin yung Mutual Defense Treaty. Kasi if you remember, Mutual Defense Treaty was crafted in 1951. Marami na ho nangyari since then. In fact, if you remember, Mutual Defense Treaty, lumabas ito after a Mutual Bases Agreement was crafted. 47 yung bases, 51 yung NDT. Sa tagal ng panahon, marami na hong mga pagbabago ang mga nangyayari. Kung maalala ninyo, bago nangyari itong mga nangyari ngayon, the United States was non-committal na pag may nangyari sa West Philippine Sea, tutulungan nila tayo. Dahil yung kanilang definition ng Metropolitan Pacific does not include South China Sea.
Yes.
Ngunit lately, nagbago ito dahil nga sa mga nangyayari ngayon at sinasabi nila, ironclad na yung commitment nila, natutulungan tayo pag tayo may nangyari, inatake yung mga barko natin sa West Philippine Sea. That's insofar as what had been verbally stated by their units. Kaya pa na yung sabi nila, ironclad. I think iba yung, if it's not written, it may not or maybe will not happen. It has to be written.
Admiral, I mean, let's just be explicit about some of the things that President Marcos said have changed. As you said, 1951, Cold War situation, we were looking at not just Russia, the USSR as the counterpower to the United States. Russia is no longer the superpower. And to that point, sabi niya nga, the real power right now is China. And he also noted that, let's face it, even the U.S. influence in Asia had already waned. No? So materially, what does that mean in terms of changing this defense treaty if it is now really focused explicitly on China? And then itack on ka na rin po dito yung tanong namin kanina kay Colonel Aguilar. I imagine, given your retired situation, you may have a different answer to our question also on our preparedness. How would you in fact assess our preparedness in this new context?
Okay, thank you very much. Unahin ko muna yung tanong mo. No? Definitely, iba na yung dynamics ngayon from the time the MDP was crafted in 1951. If you would allow me a little time, historically, nung ginawa natin to, ang focus was Cold War, basically Russia. China noon, parang non-player pa insofar as geomilitary dynamics. And then eventually, nung pagkatapos nung na-abrogate nung nanalo na yung US sa Cold War 1991, that was also the time na pinalis natin yung Amerikano. Diba? But that was also the time China is already rising. So in the interim, ang naging menu noon was the global war on terror. So if you notice, yung Mutual Defense Treaty, may components ito na in the implementation of this. The Mutual Defense Board, which is focusing on the coordination mill-to-mill, US at Philippines on the implementation of NDT. Nung magkaroon ng global war on terror, kinreate yung tinatawag na Security Engagement Board in tandem sa MDT. Kasi ang menu naman nun, global war on terror. When global war on terror nag-dissipate na ng konti, ito China na ngayon yung threat. So, gusto nating ibalik doon sa original concept ng Mutual Defense Treaty, which is external defense, US and Philippines helping each other. Ngayon, iba na yung dynamics kasi kahit yung mga tinatawag natin assumptions, iba na . So we need really to review itong military defense treaty natin and make it attune dito ngayon on the realities on the ground and at sea. Geopolitical, military, economic, ipagsama-sama na natin yun para malinaw and put it in writing kung kaya para malinaw. Ngayon, going doon naman sa tanong mo pangalawa, yung insofar as yung kakayanan na natin, malaki na in-improve natin in what we call the credible deterrence. When we say credible deterrence, kasi hindi lang yung kagamitan natin na para sa armed forces, it includes the capacity and capability. Capability in the context of the hardware and capacity in the context yung kaalaman ng mga tao natin. Answering your question directly, malaki na yung in-improve natin. Now we have itong multi-role fighters ng Air Force. We now have the frigates ng Navy. Diba? Meron na itong mga malalakas na artillery ng Army, just to mention some. We are not getting this dahil wishlist lang ito yung mga laruan na kailangan . May kaakibat yan sa strategy na ginawa natin noon pa. And we cannot just go into the details of that for operational security. Pero lahat ng makinukuha natin, nag-improve na. In fact, pati yung kinukuha ng Navy ngayon o napirmahan na yung BrahMos missile system is already part of our credible deterrence pag nandyan na. Ibig sabihin, just like the MLRS, the HIMARS, it has a range of 300 kilometers. So wag kang paporma-porma dyan sa West Philippine Sea dahil aabutin ka ng missiles namin pag nagkataon. That's credible deterrence. Meaning to say, when you talk credible deterrence, kung usapan ika nga sa kanto, di ba? Alam ko, may bully rito, mag-aaway kami. Alam ko, matatalo ako. Pero I will assure you, duduguin ko ang ilong mo at mapapahiya ka. Now, translate it into the global scenario, yun lang ayaw natin. Sigurado naman, yung malalaking puwersa, ayaw din nilang mapahiya na isang maliit na bansa pareho natin, duduguin yung ilong nila as a matter of metaphor, no?
Sir,
So yun.
yes, sir. Sir, to your first point, you want something ironclad din in writing. Could you be a bit more specific? I'd imagine that you'd want something along the lines na when defining the area which would be covered by a treaty where we would have to protect each other. I suppose that's one. But the other thing then is this: what is there in the MDT now that you would also want to be more careful with as far as bringing the Philippines into conflicts that it does not want to be involved in?
Ed, siguro, no, to be, operationally minded about it. Isang mahirap kasi sa interpretations Maybe, for example lang, sample, the trip lines, quote unquote. What specific actions would trigger, basically, yung invoking by either side of the Mutual Defense Treaty? And then number two, ang isang malaking question mark sa atin, they will say na, okay, we will come to the defense of the Philippines subject to, alaman naman natin, merong kolatilya yan the approval ng Congress nila for acts of war. So, teka muna, kailan mangyayari yan? Kung kami dito, kinakalampag na. Those are some of the things that
But sir,
maybe...
that's in the MDT, di ba? That's in the MDT.
They will come.
The US will come to our
rescue.
rescue,
Yeah, they will-
subject to their
Yun
Congress's
na nga, yun
approval.
ang sinasabi niya.
Yeah,
But
oo.
how do
Ibig
you
sabi-
evolve that?
Because
So
that's
that
what
it
the
functions more according, in our favor, di ba? Because that's what the president was saying.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm questioning, the subject to it. Because, like, for example, in the definition of terms, we make clear the definition of terms in so far as the NDT is concerned. And then, operationally, what are the tripwires? Pag nangyari yung tripwires na yun, dapat walang nang nihay-niho. Diba?
But will the U.S. Congress allow that? I mean,
Yes, sir, but it's in their
Yeah,
constitution,
exactly.
din, di ba?
Yun na nga
constitutional
Again,
limitation din yan.
yun nga, somebody was just saying kanina, why would we allow something na yung sa constitution nila, susunod tayo? No, these are the things that need... I don't know. Modest aside, I have been in the mutual basis agreement since 1984, yung mga natin. And those are the things that have been discussed Sa basis agreement yun Yung MDT, hindi nagalaw ng gusto since then way back in the 80s. So it's really high time na ito talagang we take second, third, fourth, fifth look at the MDT and maybe clear out some of the things. The other operational matters, again, maybe it's now in the ball of the defense and diplomatic areas natin to define what are the political implications of the things that we would want. Hindi lang tungkol sa gera
Siguro po kasi I think just to go into that a little bit, as far as you understand, I imagine the splitting of hairs is between, on the one hand, a very clear U.S. Constitution that says that their Congress has sole authority to declare war. And then, short of that, what does a mutual defense treaty allow? In other words, what kinds of actions can take place in response to a defense treaty? So, but you think that there is enough room between any kind of defensive action in defensive treaty, short of declaring war, that there is enough room there for Manila to ask the U.S., can we have something clearer here?
There should be. Kasi in number of incidents around the world, nagkakaroon naman yung tawag dito, nagkakaroon naman ng mga engagements that did not lead to the declaration of war.
Parang Russia, limited
Ukraine,
military
diba? Ukraine,
operation.
Exactly. So, there's nothing that prevents, both parties in coming up with annexes, to a treaty and defining therein what is to the mutual interest. Kasi nung ginawa yung MDT noon, 1951, kakagaling na natin sa pagbigay nila sa atin ng independence. And nakadikta lahat kung anong advantage sa kanila. In fact, ang natin doon, there should have been, sa military basis agreement, may mga ano pa nga eh, may mga revisions in the military basis agreement eh. How come NDP is wala? You have the Bolen Serrano Act, you have the Ramos-Rusk agreement, what do you call this, exchange of verbal notes, revising the mutual basis agreement which led to the demise of the basis in 1991. Bakit NDP hindi nabigyan ng tamang atensyon?
Colonel, tanong ko lang yung capabilities natin. Kaya ba natin paduguin ang ilong? ng ano?
What will that entail ba? Paano ba paduguin ang
Kaya ba natin magpadugo
China
ng
ng
ilong?
hindi?
Ng budi?
Ito na.
Wala akong binabanggit na bansa.
Yes, ma'am. Once we are attacked, we'll do everything to make sure that we will be able to resist the attack.
To resist.
Yes.
But not bloody
Paduguin.
the nose.
It may be included already, ma'am.
Pwede.
Okay. But sige, well,
Pwede
Yeah.
may capability, may strength.
Not just the nose, probably.
okay.
Oh, not just the nose. I like that.
Ayan,
Well, anyway, si Colonel Midel Aguilar po ang spokesperson ng AFP at kasama rin po natin for this entire show, retired Vice Admiral Alexander Pama. Sirs, maraming salamat.
Sir,
Salamat,
Thank you,
sir.
good to have you, sir. We hope to have you
Admiral
back.
Pama, thank you.
And that's it for the
Maraming salamat.
Chiefs. Ako po si Robbie Alampay.
We hope what was discussed here will keep the conversation going. I'm Ami Pamintuan.
Join us again tomorrow for another in-depth discussion. I'm Lucy Cruz Valdez.
I'm Ed Linga. We are One News, all sides, all the time.